In the future, thousands of people live in this massive underground bunker because the world outside is believed to be poisoned. However, all records of history have been erased, so no one knows how or why humanity has ended up in this state. Now, because of the curiosity of one woman, they are about to find out. A man named Holston Becker wakes up and goes through his morning routine before walking out of his house and into the silo. The silo is an underground bunker, hundreds of stories deep, where all of humanity lives. Becker is the sheriff of the silo. It is believed that the world outside the silo is poisoned, and no one can survive in it. Holston walks into his office and locks himself in a cell. His deputy Marnus walks in and asks him what he is doing, and Becker says the words, "I want to go out." Marnus is devastated at this. The law of the silo states that no one should ask to go out, because once someone asks, the request cannot be taken back, and they will be sent out into the poisoned world forcefully. Jump back to 3 years before this incident. Becker and his wife Allison have applied for a license to have a baby, and they find out that they have been granted permission. They are both incredibly excited about it. The news has spread all over the silo, and people all around congratulate them. A woman named Gloria approaches them in the cafeteria while they're having lunch and offers Allison to visit her for fertility advice. Becker does not like Gloria because he thinks she's a crazy con woman. Next, Allison and Becker go to the doctor and get Allison's birth control removed. They now have a period of 1 full year to achieve conception before their license expires. They arrive home and vigorously make love. Next, Allison is at her office. She works in the IT department of the silo. Her boss, Bernard, arrives and scolds her for posting an article on how to recover deleted files without his permission. He says he has taken the article down. Over dinner, Allison discusses with Becker that there are too many rules in the silo. She talks about the history of the place. More than 100 years ago, a rebellion occurred in the silo where the rebels were trying to open the doors and get out. But they were stopped because opening the doors would kill everyone else too. It is said that the rebels were the ones who destroyed the servers and the books containing the history of the silo and the world. This is why they don't know who built this place and what went wrong outside. Allison asks that if the rebels were punished for deleting their history, why is it that keeping any relic from before the rebellion is outlawed and asking questions about their history is forbidden by the judicial branch of the silo? Becker simply tells her to stop this line of thought. Next, half the year has passed, and despite trying again and again, Allison still hasn't become pregnant. One day, Gloria stops her in the street and invites her to her house. At the house, Gloria leaves the tap running while they talk, so they can't hear them. Allison asks who's they, and Gloria makes it clear that she means the judicial branch. Gloria says that she wants to talk to Allison because she has heard that Allison is among the few people who have questions about the silo and its history. She says they have no idea what happened before the rebellion, and if it was even the rebels who erased the history. Allison gets uncomfortable and tries to leave, and Gloria adds that they would not want a person like Allison to have a baby. Allison discusses Gloria's remark with Becker, and he brushes it off, saying Gloria is crazy. Next, a computer repairman named George requests Allison's services, and she goes to see him. He says he's wanted to meet her for a while. He shows her that he printed her article on recovering deleted files before it was taken down, and used it to recover a really old hard drive that a customer found under the floors of his house. The drive is older than the rebellion, which captures Allison's interest. George says that the drive appears full, but he can't access the files, and Allison helps him. While they work, the rest of the silo celebrates Freedom Day, which is the day the rebels were defeated. Allison figures out that the drive has old library records, and inside they find the very blueprints of the silo. George gets excited, but Allison gets worried, because this drive is a relic, and they can be punished for this. She tells him to destroy it, and leaves. Over the next few days, Allison's curiosity gets the best of her. She goes to have a conversation with Gloria, and then goes to look at the contents of the hard drive with George. One of the files is a video of someone who went outside, and it shows a green and healthy world. Allison cannot believe what they are seeing. Next, the pregnancy time window is over, and Allison is supposed to show up to get her birth control placed back inside her, but she is late. Becker goes to her work and finds she is not there. He comes home and finds Allison in a terrible state. She tells him that Judicial were never going to let them have a baby. Becker doesn't understand, and she shows him that she just cut a birth control device out of herself. This means the doctor never took it out in the first place. Seeing Allison bleeding, Becker rushes to get a doctor. But as he's coming back, he is informed that Allison is in the cafeteria. Allison is telling everyone that the display they are shown of the outside world is a lie that keeps them docile and obedient. Becker arrives and tries to calm her down, thinking she's having a breakdown because she couldn't get pregnant. Frustrated with Becker never listening to her, Allison yells she wants to go out. Becker is horrified, and Marnes regrettably puts her in cuffs. Next, Becker investigates Gloria and George and looks for any way to get Allison out of this predicament, but he finds nothing. In jail, Allison apologizes to Becker, but insists again that they are being lied to. Becker points to the display, showing her the dead bodies of the last 2 people that went outside. Allison says the display is manipulated and faked. Becker asks why, and she says she doesn't know that yet, but she will find out and come back for him. She says that all those who go out are asked to clean the display sensor, so she will only clean it if the world outside is healthy and green, as she suspects. If she doesn't clean, it will mean she was wrong. In an emotional ceremony for Becker and Allison, Allison is placed in a protective suit and asked to walk out. As the entire silo watches, Allison steps outside, looks around, and proceeds to clean the sensor, while smiling at it. Becker cannot believe it. After cleaning, she tries walking over a hill, but begins to stumble and lose strength. After struggling for a bit, she falls and dies. Becker mourns. 2 years after this incident, Becker is sitting in his office when he is informed by Marnes that George has died by falling from the silo stairs. He says that an engineer claims that it was murder, while the official report says suicide. Becker goes to see the engineer, who is named Juliet Nichols. In the present day, Marnes speaks to Becker in jail and says that Becker was fine until he met Juliet. He demands to know what happened, and Becker replies that he just finally started listening to Allison. Next, Becker puts on the protective suit and steps outside as the people of the silo, including Juliet, watch on. Becker sees that the outside world is lush and green and notices birds flying overhead. He realizes Allison was right. He cleans the sensor so that one day people may have a chance to see this. However, as he begins walking toward the hill, he starts to have trouble breathing. He stumbles and takes off his helmet. With his final breaths, he crawls toward the body of Allison. Juliet storms away, screaming about Holston lying. She goes to the generator and throws a complete tantrum. Next, Marnes sees a letter on his desk addressed to him from Becker. He is informed by his assistant that people are buying hammers and other weapons in large quantities. Later, Marnes arrives to see the mayor, who is worried about the situation developing in the silo. She says she has been reading the previous logs, but there is nothing from before the rebellion, so she'll never know what caused the rebellion, and hence what to watch out for. She is also worried that since Becker did not leave a recommendation for his successor, Judicial will try to slip one of their people into the post. Next, a brawl breaks out among the common people over the last hammer being sold, and members of the Judicial arrive to settle it. Juliet arrives at her friend, Martha's place, and Martha senses that something is upsetting her, so she asks her to spill it. Juliet says that Hazelton lied to everyone that George committed suicide, when he was clearly murdered. Martha asks how she knows this, and Juliet says that the last time George met her before dying, he really wanted to show her something. Jump back to 3 months earlier. George arrives to meet Juliet and acts secretive because their relationship isn't registered in the silo records. He tells her he's found something big and will see her later tonight. He worryingly looks over his shoulder and watches members of Judicial arriving. Later at night, Juliet comes home and finds that George isn't there, but he's left her a note and a relic. The next morning, Juliet finds out from her coworker that George has committed suicide. She is distraught. She goes to her friend in the police and says George wouldn't commit suicide. She also adds that he was probably murdered. Her friend is hesitant, but agrees to take her concerns to Sheriff Becker. Becker arrives and questions Juliet thoroughly regarding why she thinks it's a murder. He also takes her to look at George's body to see if they can find any signs of struggle that would prove it wasn't suicide. During all this, he notices a watch on her wrist and recognizes that it's a relic. Over lunch, Becker asks Juliet how long she and George were together, and she says she doesn't know what he's talking about. Becker says he will not report their unregistered relationship, but he needs all the facts to solve the case. Juliet says she will tell him everything if he agrees to not rat her out. He promises he won't. Juliet takes Becker home and shows him the relic and the note that George left her. The note says, "Remember where you last saw this?" Juliet takes Becker all the way down to the lowest levels of the silo, beyond the point where it is forbidden to go forward. They enter a massive cave and see a giant machine. Juliet says that she and George guessed this is the machine that dug the space for the silo. They go further down and arrive at a workstation that George had set up. Juliet shows Becker a box full of relics that George had. Among them is a camcorder, and Juliet says she hasn't seen this one before. Juliet finds a wire left behind by George, which leads to his bag, hanging above the water down below. In the bag, they find the hard drive that George and Allison worked on, and a page with Allison's handwriting, which Becker recognizes. Juliet realizes that Becker isn't there to help her. He just wants to see if George is the one who pushed Allison to go out. She lashes out at him. He says he has to report and destroy this drive because it's a threat to order in the silo. Juliet angrily says that if Becker had just listened to Allison, she would still be alive right now. After a little contemplation, Becker says he will keep investigating this, but Juliet needs to lay low in the meanwhile. He says he'll send her a sign when he finds something. In the present day, Juliet tells Martha that Becker never gave her any sign before dying. She adds that she didn't tell Becker everything, showing Martha the bottom half of George's note. It says, "I found what I was looking for." Next, Marnus goes to the mayor and reveals that Becker did in fact leave a recommendation for his successor, and it's Juliet Nichols. Juliet goes back down to the cave and reminisces about her sweet times with George there. In the memory, Juliet notices there is a lot of lying around, and George says he needs it for where he is going. Juliet asks where that is, and George says that he is looking for a door. He saw the door in an old drawing and believes it's down below, somewhere in all the water, which is why he needs to rope to stay afloat. They proceed to make love. In the present, Juliet takes the same rope and starts climbing down toward the water. She reaches right to the surface of the water and her headlamp falls. The light disappears instantly, which means the water is very deep. Scarce and nervous, she hangs above the vast body of water in the cave, all by herself. The end. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like our channel and subscribe if you enjoy content like this. Also, let us know what movie you would love us to recap for you.